Let's talk about Australia. We often talk about the batting, but you've got to say the top order of Aaron Finch and probably Glenn Maxwell, the two guys that aren't in form going into this World Cup.
No, I don't think our warm-up games have been any use to us, really. I mean, we've been travelling all around Australia, which hasn't been great. I'm not sure why we've been, to the Gold Coast and then to Perth and then to Canberra. But no, we've seen Finch and Maxwell. Both these players have struggled in nearly every game. So they didn't really get much out of that warm-up games, particularly Aaron Finch. And the weird thing was we never gave Inglis and Steve Smith much of a go. So we basically picked our side and stuck to it through these warm-up games. But really, Finch and Maxwell are the two guys, the glaring standouts who haven't done much.
Yeah, they are. I'm actually not that worried about Glenn Maxwell. He plays a high-risk game. He's been successful in his form of the game over a long time at different tournaments. And he's got one of those guys that can win your World Cup. You just got to make sure he's refreshed, and that's the thing I think we missed during these warm-up games. I think you needed to give guys like Maxwell a break. He looked actually fatigued, so I'm not worried about his form. Finchy, I'm glad to see him at the top of the order, and I think this being probably his last ICC event, I think he'll relax, and I think he's really going to take the game on in the first 6 overs.
All right, what about his partner at the other end, Dave Warner? Been in pretty good nick. We've seen some good signs from David Warner. No,
he's playing really well, David Warner. I'm not worried about him in the least. He was the leading run scorer of the last World Cup in the UAE, so he's a big match player, David Warner. And what I've liked about his warm-up games is the way he's batted, the tempo he's batted with. He hasn't looked to hit 6s and 4s every ball. He's used the pace of the ball. To me, if we need someone to bat through the innings, David Warner could be that player as well. We've got a lot of hitters there, so we might need someone to bat through the 20 overs. So he's the guy that can do that as well.
All right, what about moving in the middle order? I always get the feeling in World Cups, 5, 6s and 7s are going to win in the World Cup. We didn't see a lot of Finch and Maxwell in the last World Cup. Is it going to be the Steve Smith? Probably may not play with Tim David in that middle order?
I think you'll see Tim David in the middle order, but the two players I'm really excited about are Stoinis and Matthew Wade. I think last World Cup they really stood up in really big moments. Matthew Wade's probably been the difference in our team for some time now. He's got runs under pressure. Steve Smith, David debate, who plays who. I think that'll work out on different venues. You play them what style of game they want to play. But, yeah, the big one for me there is the way Matthew Wade's playing under pressure. All
right, well, he's going to be out there with Tim David. Would you put him in the 11?
Oh, Tim David's a definite starter. He's the difference between the last World Cup and this World Cup. He's the only player that didn't play in the UAE, Tim David. So, I see that power game through the middle really strong for Australia. That 5, 6, 7 with Stoinis, David and Wade. They're the guys that can win you the tournament. Mitch Marsh at number 3, I reckon he's in good form as well. So we've actually got 5 players in really good form with the bat. That includes Warner and those 4 I just mentioned. 2 that are out of form, but it doesn't matter if you've got the other guys in form.
All right, let's have a look at the schedule for Australia because, as you said, it kicks off on Saturday. That is the 22nd of October, and that's at the Sydney Cricket Ground. They take on New Zealand, and then they head over to Group A winner at Perth Stadium. So they're doing a lot of travelling, aren't they, Hads?
Yeah, they are, and I'm nervous about this first game. New Zealand haven't shown great form leading into this tournament. What they are, though, is a tournament team. They come up in big tournaments, but they're runner-up last year. And they've got some players that match up really well against Australia. You see Bold at the top of the order, but I'm really nervous about that first game against New Zealand.
Well, they've got a good run home, Australia. They play the Group B runner-up, and then they play Afghanistan and stuff. They get in a bit of trouble against New Zealand and England. At least they can go hard at the end if they need to get their net run rate up. Yeah,
well, Afghanistan, that game's in Adelaide, so that really should suit our bowling attack in Adelaide with that sort of bounce and pace. If you happen to play Afghanistan, say, in Melbourne or Sydney, where it might spin a bit, they'd be much tougher, but I think Adelaide's a good draw to play Afghanistan.
You also don't want to play in teams like Afghanistan when you're chasing the run rate as well, and a lot of weather's around. So it's important that you start really well in this World Cup because if you're playing an Afghanistan team where you have to move the game forward, that's when Rashid Khan and Mujeeb come right into the contest.
All right, let's move on. We've done the Aussies. What about India? How good are they? They can be very, very dangerous. They take on Pakistan in their first game. Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul at the top of the order. Is batting their strength?
Oh, definitely. There's no Bumrah and no Jadeja in their lineup, so that's a couple of big holes in their bowling lineup in here. But their batting, it has to be the best top 6 in the tournament, along with Australia. They've just got so much strike player there with guys like Sharma and KL Rahul. They can take the game forward right from the get-go. They're fairly orthodox players as well, and I think they're quite well suited on the bouncy, pacey tracks in Australia. So, they've got some firepower, particularly at the start of the order.
What about this guy, Hads, coming in at number 3, probably one of the best batsmen in the world we'll ever see?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in the last month or so, he's come back into form. He's got 100 in this form in the game recently, and let's be honest, he enjoys the big occasions. This is what he's made for, a World Cup event, and I expect him to have a huge tournament off the back of some really good opener batters.
No captaincy for him. Will he relax and ease into it a bit more, you think?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he'll be much more free in what he does and just worry, doesn't have to worry about everybody else, so he'll focus on his own game. But he brings a lot of energy to the side, particularly in the field. The Indians, you're going to need to feel well in this tournament. So India have got a good fielding side, but look at the power after those guys. Yadav, he's the new kid on the block, isn't he, Yadav? He strikes about 180 in T20 cricket. He's a fantastic player, so we haven't seen a lot of him. But he's a super player. And Hardik Pandya, he wasn't in the Indian team the last World Cup, and he brings great balance to their middle order, doesn't he, Hades?
Yeah, I think one of the things we know about his batting, but with Bumrah out of the tournament, Hardik Pandya also, he's a bit better than part-time. We've seen him take the new ball, he can swing it, he's a wicket taker, but the best thing I like about him, he wants to take the game on. He's not there to let the game just go in this slow sort of fashion. He wants to win games, and that's the big thing in a World Cup. You want players like that taking on the big moments.
Well, Hardik Pandya in the middle order there, that's where you can win and lose World Cups.
Yeah, he can get you 40 off 20 to win you a game, a bit like Tim David. So those sort of guys are so important. They've got guys like Rishabh Pant who mightn't even make their side. That's how good their top six is. And Dinesh Karthik is a really good finisher at number 7. So India's batting is about the strongest in the competition.
I reckon we'll get a good indication of how they go against Pakistan, the MCG. They reckon there'll be 90,000+ people. It is sold out. Let's get moving on, boys. England, gee, they look good in the warm-ups, haven't they? England against Australia.
Yeah, it was interesting. We know how strong England's batting is. They've got a lot of power and they trust each other right the way through. I thought their bowling was going to be a bit light on, but with Wokes with that new ball, I think he'll enjoy our conditions. And Sam Curran, to me, he's been outstanding in these warm-up games. He plays the role with the tough overs. He knows exactly where to bowl. So England, to me, are one of the teams to beat.
Josh Buttler at the top of the order. Is he key?
He is definitely the key, and that worries me a little bit. I think they do rely on Josh Buttler a lot. And if he doesn't quite come off, I think it leaves a bit of a hole and lacks, the confidence starts to go if Buttler fails. But having said that, I think he's the best T20 batsman in world cricket, and he's got a lot of power at the top of the order with him. Hales in particular, he's a bit hit and miss, Alex Hales, but on his day, he's a really good player. We've seen guys like Moeen Ali, Ben Stokes. Hopefully he can come good. So I think batting is England's strength as well. Their bowling, I still think, is a little bit on the weak side, but Sam Curran bowled really well in those warm-up games.
Well, we saw one of the games of Milan coming in batting 3, around that 3-4 for England. This guy, if he comes off, is very, very impressive.
Well, he's the glue, isn't he? He understands his game really well. He knows he hasn't got the power of the top order or the lower order, but he controls the tempo of the game. And if you've got someone like Alex Hales and Buttler at the top who play a high-risk game...
Clears the ropes.
This guy, though, controls the tempo, and he does a really good job to bat with the tail and complements the power hitters.
All right, what about the quicks for England? Wood, we've seen him in one game, pushing around about 150 kilometres an hour. How do they use him?
Well, they need him to be a strike bowler because they lack pace. Apart from Wood, they've pretty much got medium paces all the way through. Chris Jordan is not as quick as he used to be. So, to me, Wood's one of their key bowlers because he can come in, ruffle up the feathers, he can get wickets like this. Big grounds in Australia, that short ball's going to be useful. Chris Wokes, he could really go the journey as well. He might pick up a few wickets, but I think their attack's just a little bit medium pace. But if Wood fires and, say, Sam Curran fires, then you never know. They might be in the hunt.
Oh, I think Wood's obviously the exciting one. He bowls around 150 Ks, but he's gettable in the first 6 overs. It'll be interesting to see how England use him. We've seen David Warner enjoy the pace of the first 6 overs in Perth. But then he come back really well and got England back into that game. They eventually won that game over in Perth. So it'll be interesting to see how they use Wood. I'd like to see him up front, looking to get wickets, a bit fuller, seeing the ball swings.
Is their weakness their bowling?
I think it is, yeah. I thought the last World Cup, their bowling under pressure can go for a few runs. No Jofra Archer. I think if Jofra Archer was in there, that'd be a different story, but he's out injured. But if they do have a weakness, it's their bowling and maybe relying too heavily on Buttler with the bat.
They were solid in the field, though. They were sharp. That's what I liked about them in those warm-up games against Australia.
Yeah, and I think that's going to play a huge role in this series. The way teams run between the wickets and the catches that they take create half chances. There's a lot bigger grounds in Australia, so you'll see a lot more 2s and 3s, but that also allows opportunities for run-out. So England do feel well.
All right, let's talk about Pakistan. As I said, they take on India in the first game. That is always a huge game. There will be over 1 billion people watching there, and that will give us an indication of how Pakistan are going, because they can be dangerous. We always say that.
Well, last World Cup, they were probably the best team.
Yeah.
They were the most consistent team. They didn't lose a game till they lost to us in the semi-finals. A lot of their success revolves around their opening partnership between Bubba and Rizwan. They score the bulk of their runs. Their bowling, I think, is pretty strong. Shaheen Shah Afridi, he's been injured, but he comes back into the side. But these are the two, Bubba and Rizwan. They score the bulk of their runs, and that can be a strength, but it can also be a weakness because the rest of the players don't get much of a look in. They haven't had much, match play out in the middle and under pressure. So I think if Bubba plays well, Pakistan play well.
Yeah, I think these two have got as much pressure on as anyone in the tournament. If these guys score well, I think they've only got players in the middle that can contribute, play 20 or 30 runs here. They've got no class in the middle. So a lot of pressures on these two. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams attack them. If they attack them at the start and get early wickets, I think Pakistan's batting is going to struggle a little bit because they rely too much on them.
Well, you talk about the batting. What about the bowling? Harris Ralph, we know that. Shaheen Shah Afridi, the left armour. I love Wreck-It Ralph when we saw him in the BBL. Full straight, hits the stumps.
Well, they're wicket takers, and they're always looking for ways to get wickets. They're aggressive. They use their bouncer well. But the one thing the fielders complimented them in last World Cup as well. They fielded a lot better. They created chances, but they're as good as any fast bowling unit in the world. Afridi swings that new ball. He loves to get in a contest. He's aggressive, and they've got a huge role to play with that new ball.
Yeah, the only problem with Shaheen is he's played no cricket. He's had a back injury, and we haven't seen him for quite a while. So I'm not sure how fit he is and how match fit he is. He's a key bowler, but they do have raw pace. Probably don't have a lot of change-ups in their bowling. They're sort of flat skidding type bowlers. Nadeem Shah skids it, Harris Ralph skids it. Their spin attack, led by Shadab Khan, is okay. But I don't think it's their strength. So really it's down to their opening batsman and probably Shaheen Shah Afridi with the ball. But they're dangerous on their day. They're dangerous. Their fielding at times cost them last tournament.
Yeah.
They dropped a few catches, so that's still a query for me. But they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, Shakib, he needs the top order getting wickets. If someone's set, they can get hold of him. He's not a big turner of the ball. So he needs the fast bowlers to do the job at the top, and then to a new batsman, he becomes really dangerous.
Do they enjoy it that they've had recent games in Pakistan where they'll feel like they're back home? Because they've been on the road basically for 10 years, haven't they?
Oh, well, it'll be interesting the first game. Pakistan, a team that sometimes can play on emotion. And you'll see in this first game with 90,000 people, India's a huge game for them. If they can control their emotions and play on skill, we'll see how their tournament unfolds again. I just get a bit worried that they might play on emotion this first game and they'll be playing from behind in the whole tournament.